There is something about the way you move through the world that other people consistently misread. You walk into a room and you already know something is off before anyone has spoken, before the mood has been named, before anyone else has even looked up. You notice the way someone's voice changed slightly when they answered a question. You notice the pause that lasted a fraction too long. You notice the smile that arrived a half-second late. And because you notice all of it, you also notice that nobody else seems to. The world has a word for this too. Oversensitive, paranoid, reads too much into things. You've been told to stop analyzing. You've been told you're imagining it. You've been told that not everything means something. As if your entire experience of reality were just an elaborate misunderstanding that more relaxed people have somehow already solved. But psychology tells a completely different story. Noticing things others miss is not anxiety wearing the costume of perception. It is not insecurity looking for confirmation. It is a specific set of cognitive and neurological traits that only certain people carry, traits that formed for reasons, traits that function with extraordinary precision, and traits that the world consistently mistakes for a problem because it doesn't understand what it's actually looking at. There are 6 rare psychological traits that define people who notice what others miss. And once you understand them, you'll finally stop wondering if something is wrong with the way you see. The first trait is the foundation of everything else. Trait 1, your brain processes incoming information at a fundamentally different depth. Most people experience the world through a kind of efficient filtering system. The brain takes in raw data, selects what's immediately relevant, discards the rest, and moves forward. This is adaptive. It allows people to function without being overwhelmed. Your brain doesn't filter the same way. Where most people experience events, you absorb them. The texture, the temperature, the emotional undertone underneath the surface words. The gap between what someone said and what their body did while they said it. Psychology calls this sensory processing sensitivity, a trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population and linked to deeper processing of both physical and emotional information. In practice, it means your nervous system is collecting significantly more data per moment than the average person's. Not metaphorically, measurably, your brain is running more processing cycles on the same input. That's why a crowded room doesn't just feel loud to you. It feels loud and visually complex and emotionally dense and socially layered all at once. You're not imagining the weight of it, you're accurately perceiving it. And this is why you notice things. Not because you're trying to, because your system was built to receive at higher resolution than most. Trait 2, you read emotional subtext as fluently as most people read words. Someone says they're fine and you know immediately, with a certainty that bypasses logic, that they are not fine. Someone laughs at something and you feel the flatness inside the laugh before your mind has processed what it means. Someone is angry but smiling, and you feel the contradiction like a low-grade dissonance that hums beneath the conversation until you're out of the room. Psychology links this to heightened mirror neuron activity, the neural system responsible for simulating other people's emotional and physical states inside your own body. In simple terms, when someone near you is carrying something, grief, anxiety, suppressed frustration, your nervous system doesn't just intellectually register that they seem upset, it physically resonates with their state. You don't only see emotional signals, you feel them from the inside. This is why you often know things about people that you have no logical basis for knowing. It's not intuition in the mystical sense, it's data. Your nervous system has been collecting and processing emotional frequency at a register most people never consciously access. If this already feels uncomfortably accurate, if you've spent your life knowing things you couldn't explain and being told you were imagining them, you're in the right place. This channel exists for people whose inner experience is more precise than the world gives them credit for. Subscribe if you want psychology that finally explains what you've always felt but never had words for. Trait 3. You have an unusually high sensitivity to incongruence. Most people are reasonably comfortable with small mismatches between what people say and what they mean, between what someone presents and what they're actually feeling. You're not. Your nervous system registers incongruence the way a finely tuned instrument registers a note that's slightly off pitch, immediately, involuntarily, and with a kind of low-level discomfort that doesn't go away until the discrepancy is resolved or named. Psychology calls this cognitive closure sensitivity, the need for coherence between what is being presented and what is actually true. In practice, it means you cannot easily ignore a thing that doesn't add up. When someone's words don't match their tone, when a story has a gap in it, when a situation feels settled on the surface but wrong underneath, your mind keeps returning to it. Not because you're obsessive, because your system was built to resolve inconsistency, not tolerate it. This is why you often catch things that others miss entirely. The detail that doesn't quite fit, the timeline that doesn't quite work, the version of events that sounds reasonable but leaves a particular question unanswered. You're not suspicious by nature, you're accurate by design. Trait 4, you carry a deep and highly developed capacity for pattern recognition. What you notice isn't just isolated details, it's the relationships between them. The way a behavior connects to a history, the way a mood follows a trigger that no one else seems to have tracked, the way a situation is beginning to resemble something that happened before, even when the surface details are completely different. Psychology links this to what researchers call associative thinking, an unusually active capacity to find connections between seemingly unrelated pieces of information. Your brain doesn't just store experiences, it cross-references them continuously. This is why you often know how something is going to end before it gets there. Not because you're pessimistic or projecting, because you've seen the pattern before and your mind has already matched it to the current data. The shadow side of this trait is real and worth naming. A brain that runs on pattern recognition doesn't always distinguish between patterns that are genuinely predictive and patterns that are merely familiar. Sometimes the match is accurate. Sometimes it's a nervous system responding to similarity where the situations are actually different. The work isn't to stop recognizing patterns, it's to hold them lightly enough to check. Trait 5. Your attention is drawn involuntarily toward what is hidden rather than what is displayed. In any given social situation, most people's attention naturally gravitates toward what's being presented. The conversation, the topic, the explicit content of what's happening. Your attention moves toward the edges, the person who hasn't spoken, the shift in energy when a particular subject was mentioned, the thing nobody said but that everyone in the room seemed to simultaneously decide not to say. Psychology describes this as peripheral attentional sensitivity, a tendency to process information from the margins of an experience rather than only from its center. In practice, it means you're often tracking several things simultaneously: the explicit content of a conversation and the emotional undercurrent beneath it, and the dynamic between the people in it, and the way that dynamic shifted when a particular word was used. This makes you an extraordinary observer. It also makes certain environments genuinely exhausting in a way that's almost impossible to explain to someone whose attention works differently. You're not processing one thing, you're processing everything all the time. And most of the world will never fully understand what that costs. Trait 6 you learn to notice because at some point, noticing kept you safe. This is the trait that almost nobody names. For many people who notice things others miss, the sensitivity didn't develop in a neutral environment. It developed in one where reading a room accurately had real consequences, where catching the early signs of someone's mood shift meant you could adjust before things escalated, where noticing the small signals gave you a window, however narrow, to prepare. Psychology calls this hypervigilance, a state of heightened environmental monitoring that develops as a nervous system response to environments that felt unpredictable or unsafe. In plain terms, your noticing was trained. You learned to observe carefully because careful observation once served a protective function. The child who read every micro-expression, tracked every shift in tone, monitored every change in the emotional atmosphere of a room. That child was not anxious. That child was strategic. That child was doing what their environment required. That same child grew up. The environments changed, but the attentional system didn't, because nervous systems learn to protect, and they keep protecting long after the original threat has passed. This isn't a malfunction. This is loyalty. The nervous system staying faithful to the survival tools it built for you. The work, if there is work to do, is simply learning to recognize when you're monitoring for danger that is no longer there. What psychology wants you to understand, what the research on sensory processing sensitivity and mirror neuron activity and associative cognition consistently points to, is that the way you see is not excessive. It is not a defect in your perceptual system. It is a perceptual system that is working exactly as it was built to work, absorbing more, cross-referencing more, tracking more, feeling more. The world will keep telling you that you read too much into things, that you're overthinking, that not everything means something. But the people who told you that were not wrong because they were cruel. They were wrong because their instruments weren't calibrated to detect what yours were detecting. They weren't seeing what you were seeing. They still aren't. You were never broken. You were built to see more clearly than most people will ever understand. And every single thing you've ever noticed, every shift in tone, every gap in a story, every room you walked into and immediately knew something was off, was real. You were right. You've always been right. Which trait hit closest to home? Drop a number in the comments. Subscribe. You're in the right place.